right, let's sing the chorus. Jesus, Jesus, there's something about that name. Okay.
Jesus, 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 there's just something about that name. Master, Savior, Jesus, like the fragrance after the rain. Jesus, 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 let all heaven and earth proclaim. Kings and kingdoms shall all pass away, but there's something about that name.
Praise the Lord. Hallelujah. All right. Let's study. I hope I'm right. First Chronicles. I thought you could have said the Kings, and I couldn't remember.
You're the teacher.
All
Why don't
right.
you know?
Okay. All right. First Chronicles. This the book of Chronicles was really enlightening to me. I have read it, but not very much. And one of the problems I had reading with the book of Chronicles is the first 9 chapters of the book of Chronicles are begets and begots and all of that. But what it does is it takes the family life and gives the genealogies of Adam. It gives the genealogies of the priest, the genealogies of this, the genealogies of that. Go on all night about it. And it's boring if you try to read it, but it's enlightening. If you have a Bible that has a heading above spaces and chapters, it'll help you a lot. So, okay. Why do we have the books of First and Second Chronicles? These books cover the same things as the book of Samuel and Kings. Chronicles cannot be compared to the Gospel of.
Can be compared to.
Can be compared to. Okay. You got the end?
It says Chronicles can be, and you said cannot be.
Did I say that? Thank you. Chronicles can be compared to the Gospel of John, the New Testament. The first 3 goals are parallel views of the life of Christ through 3 different individuals. Now, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. Matthew, Mark, and Luke are complete pictures of the life of Christ. And John, and I'm surprised it's John. You know why? I'll tell you why. Scholars have a habit to make John look holy. Okay? And I think he was. And he's known for the picture of the Last Supper where he's leaning upon the breast of Jesus. But if you read the history of John, okay, remember him and James? James was his brother. First thing John did was, in the Bible, what's recorded in the Bible was, they were Jesus was talking about the Samaritans, and John says, well, Lord, let us call fire down upon them. John and James. That's that tender-hearted guy that you see lying on the breast of Jesus. And I have often thought about him, and the reason I think about him is not so much his laying on the breast of Jesus, but more that he conquered himself to be able to be used by Jesus. And later on, he's known as John the Revelator, because he revealed the book of Revelation in the last days to us. But John in the New Testament, the first three Gospels are parallel views of the life of Christ through three different individuals. One is the book of John, and did not attempt to cover the life of Christ, but drew out certain events in the life of Jesus to prove that he was the Son of God. In similar form, Chronicles draws out attention to certain events in the history of Israel and Judah to teach lessons for all of time. And one of these lessons they will teach you is that there was no music worship during the time up until the time of David. If David would not have introduced music to the temple worship, to the high priest worship, and wrote out songs, it's highly unlikely, and some say this, that the church would have music today. Now the Church of Christ, they still believe that musical instruments should not be in the church. Where do they get that? From the teaching of the Old Testament. Okay? It evoked the life of Jesus that he was the Son of God. In similar form, Chronicles draws our attention to certain events in the history of Israel and Judah to teach us lessons for all of time. First Chronicles centers almost entirely around one person, King David and Ezra. No, just King David. Ezra is believed to be the author of Chronicles. What you want to remember is this, that Chronicles is teaching about Israel and things after the persecution in the Babylonian captivity. Okay? Yeah. First Chronicles also centers entirely on one person around King David. Ezra is believed to be the author of Chronicles. That's important because Ezra was a priest. Okay? This is important. Samuel and Kings were written before the captivity of the nations, while the events were transpired with Chronicles was written after the Jews returned from captivity and was a view looking back after the captivity. Okay. D, what is the difference between Kings and Chronicles? Kings gives us man's viewpoint of Chronicles, and Chronicles gives us God's viewpoint after the return of the people that were held in captivity. Three important things were emphasized in First Chronicles. It was written to motivate Jews to safeguard their heritage and beliefs that God had given them. It was written to place significance on the law, the temple, and the priesthood. I'm going to just throw this in here. Why was the New Testament written? The New Testament was written to show us grace, the church, and the life of Jesus Christ. So they correspond. C, written to remind the people to not forget the promise of the Messiah. And I believe that's in Chronicles. It doesn't say whether it's first or second Chronicles, but 7:14, 17:14, so if it's not in the first one, you know it's going to be a second.
Well, it's only the First Chronicles, so it's probably First Chronicles.
Is it first Chronicles?
In the header too, it says
Yeah,
First
I know
Chronicles.
that.
Well, you want to be jumping in Second Chronicles.
Well, that's definite.
The Bible said, "Elohim him in my house and in my kingdom forever, and his throne shall be established forevermore."
Right. Good. Thank you. It was written to remind the people to not forget the promise of the Messiah. What are some unique characteristics of First Chronicles? It has the longest recorded genealogy of the Bible. 9 chapters are devoted to the genealogies. Okay. Describes one of the greatest revivals of all time. That's chapters 15 and 16. This is the first time you'll read about music. Music is temple worship, okay? Well, it would be first and second Kings, but that's because of David, okay? It highlights the covenant of God with David, chapter 17. I found something I thought was unique the other day. I was reading about mothers in the Bible. And you come to Bathsheba, and she is listed as one of the greatest mothers in the Bible. I thought that's not off, but it's unique to me, because my human understanding thinks about the relationship between her and David. But the truth is this: if Solomon would not have had Bathsheba, he could not have been the kind of king that he was. And the reason for that was because Bathsheba had been taught by David, but she also understood the nations around Solomon. Now here's the thing. Solomon must not listen to her for all the wives and the concubines he had. So I'll leave it with them. The only dark side of First Chronicles was in 21, where David numbered the people against the wishes of God. Why is this important? Number one, remember when he numbered the people and God told him not to? Well, what God was working on was forgiveness of sin. Okay? And to trust God. That's what God wanted. So when David numbered the people, in God's eyes, he had just pushed out the forgiveness of sin more than just trusting God in anything, and even the numbers of people. But here's what happened. David bought the threshing floor of Ornan. Now remember when he bought the threshing floor of Ornan, Ornan said to my king, I will give you this land and I will let you have it. David said this, I will not give anything to God that does not cost me. What's he referring to? Okay, the threshing floor of Ornan was the place and is the place where the temple was built. When the temple was built, after that, David, then he wanted to build, remember David wanted to build a temple, but God said no. A lot of people think it was because of his relationship with Bathsheba. That's not so. It has nothing to do with it. It was because he was a warrior and he had blood on his hands. And God did not want a man to build a temple that ever. But here's what David did. Solomon did not have to collect all the materials to build the temple, okay? David left all the materials, all the money, and everything that Solomon needed to build the temple. Solomon got selfish, and he raised the taxes on the people, and then the people began to complain. But David was the one that gathered everything to rebuild the temple. The only dark side of 1 Chronicles 21, where David numbered the people against the wishes of God. It is the threshing floor of ordained, the temple site. The sin of David was not mentioned. Why? The book was written after Israel had returned from captivity, and it was unimportant to belabor the point. What God had forgiven, he forgot. And what does this say about our past? God separates our sins as far as the east is from the west, so on and so forth. First Chronicles was written to remind us to remember our heritage. Okay. We should always keep in mind where God has brought us from. You've heard the song, show me where you brought me from, where it could have been, so on and so forth. Here's the thing, the book of 1st and 2nd Chronicles originally was called the words of the days of the things. It omitted events and does not include 1st and 2nd Samuel and 1st and 2nd Kings. Okay. And great sightseeing tours for the week. The history of Israel and the men that subdued the Philistines, David arranged for the building of the temple after that. And he arranged for the ark to be brought back to Israel. You know, great sightseeing tours. Everybody has their own explanation of that. So I just said that David arranged for the building of the temple. That's what. First one is chapter 10. Saul was killed on Mount Gilboa. Chapter 11, David became the king of Israel and his mighty men. This is important because had not David had these mighty men, he would not have been able to conquer the Philistines. There's 30 of them, there's more than 30 listed, but 30 of them were important. So when David began to look for an army, he looked for the best soldiers. The first soldiers that he chose were the soldiers that could shoot a bow and arrow with the left hand or the right hand, and could sling
Sling.
sling from the left hand to the right hand, okay? And that's in 1 Chronicles, David, king of Israel, and David's mighty men, okay? Then 12 is the culmination of David's mighty men, the superstars of his army. The number of David's men helped David defeat the Philistines. Why is that important? Because had David not defeated the Philistines, I still think the ark would have been brought back to Israel. The reason for that is it had been gone for 20 years. And he said in the scriptures, I'll not sleep or slumber until I bring God's presence back into Israel. He brought it back in. He complained because he didn't have a house to put God's ark in. He put it in the temple. okay? I mean, a tent. The reason you put it in a tent was because that was how the ark was taken care of during the years that Moses carried it through the wilderness. Okay? Now, those things, and then also Chronicles, music was introduced to the worship of the temple or the church. And that's why we sing today. And this one author I was reading, not this author, no, said, it'd be a terrible thing to have a church without music. I said to myself, you ought to try it. But if we didn't have people like Sister Anthony that could carry the tune, we'd be up the creek without a paddle. So, till we get music, we will have our own musicians play every Sunday morning or whenever. Now that's all I have. Okay. Just know this, the first and second Chronicles didn't start out as first and second Chronicles. It started out as one book. And then over the years, Bible scholars separated it into first and second Chronicles. And the first big separation came when the Latin Vulgate Bible was written. That's it. All right.
You didn't take us on any of your great.
Huh?
I said, you didn't take us on any of your great sightseeing tours.
I'm taking it over to her. I'm not.
You stayed very on subject today.
Huh?
I said, you stayed very on subject today.
Well,
Who replaced it?
my thinking is, all these things relate to the history of what's in the Bible.
So you're always, so you're always.
No, I'm not always concerned. I'm on, which I think is part of the subject. It's not. All right. We'll see how fast we got here. We're not having to go any further. Got through in 25 minutes. Now I can go watch basketball. There's a reason for everything. No,
All right, let's turn this train before you blaspheme yourself some more.
You gotta finish packing.
We need to go buy a fan.
Julie.
well, if you were in the old church,